In this week's episode of Gangsta, the Battle of Ergastelum comes to a grueling and violent end, and one hell of a cliffhanger ending. To my understanding, what I've read and what I've been told, this is supposed to be the final episode of Gangsta. There has not been an announcement for a Season 2, and if that is the case, and this is truly the final episode of the series, I have to say that this one is kind of a disappointment. There are way too many loose ends, way too many questions unanswered, and not only that, but this episode was basically a glorified build-up to a real finale that might not actually happen. And an even bigger disappointment is that Nicholas, arguably the main character of the series, doesn't do anything in the final episode of the series. At all. He's been practically absent from the last two. And to me, personally, that's a really big disappointment. I just have to be honest. I was expecting a little bit more from the end of this series. However, my hopes are high that there is going to be a second season, because despite the fact that Gangster doesn't exactly have the highest production value, best animation, or artwork, I do enjoy the story and I do enjoy the world. And I like the characters and I want to see where they're going. And at the end of the day, after watching this episode, it almost seems like they're basically just telling me, go read the manga. And it totally gives me these horrible flashbacks to when I was watching Tokyo Ghoul, in particular the second season, which ended on such a ridiculous way that you have to read the manga if you really want to know what's going on. And I don't watch anime so that I can read manga. I want to freaking watch a badass Japanese cartoon. I don't want to have to read all the time. Truth be told, I only own so many manga. I'm more of an anime collector, and that's why I really like anime so much. It's a visual medium with voice acting and music and great animation, and just Gangsta, unfortunately, never really lived up to that to the very end. Despite that, I still enjoyed the series a lot, but some of the highlights of the last episode definitely is the scene where Stryker goes to Monroe's mansion and he just wastes people all left and right, and he fights against that one big dude who's working for Monroe. I believe his name is Miles, and he's also fighting against Warwick, and there's this great scene where they try to trick him, where Warwick is literally hanging from like this ceiling like Batman, and he tries to shoot him, and he sets up these guns on the ceiling, which Stryker just dodges everything and annihilates both of these guys. He actually ends up stabbing Warwick in the stomach and throwing him out the window. We don't know! The final shot of the series is Warwick just... We don't know! The final shot of the series is Warwick laying on the ground being left for dead as he's bleeding out and the rain comes down. That's really it. There's a few scenes in the episode that seem like they really are building up to something even bigger, and again, that is a shame. You have the character of Loretta, who's literally gearing up for battle and is actually looking a lot like her father in this one scene, which actually gave me some goosebumps. It was a really well done scene. Another story that's left completely unresolved is the story of Marco, Connie, and Connie's grandmother. We get to learn a little bit more in this episode that apparently Connie's grandmother lost her son and his son's wife. And this is all apparently because of Marco, because he actually used to be a part of Esminates, which actually makes sense because he's a superhuman, he has a really cool power, and this is of course why Stryker and Beretta are going after him and kidnapping Connie. But where is that story going? You're gonna have to read the manga to find out. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Gangsta, which could be the final episode of the series? I'm just not digging this one. You know, if there is another episode, I think this one is going to be a pretty decent one just because it's a nice build-up to something, but if this is the final episode, then just... I'm disappointed. Just the series ended up really not going anywhere. No resolution, not learning even more about the characters. I wanted a lot more history from Nicholas and Warwick, who were practically absent from the last two. At least Warwick had some action scenes in this episode, which were definitely really cool, especially with his skills hanging from the ceiling and setting up those traps. This and the fact that he's just a normal human with an eye patch, those are some freaking skills right there. And I wanted to see a little bit more maybe from some of Monroe's goons, and Monroe's story, unfortunately, was never resolved. If there is another episode after this, I hope they get into that. So, still, that's the thing. This seems like a really great before the final episode. You know, if that's what it was, I'd give this episode a 4 out of 5. I think it was a really nice build-up. If it's not, then I have to give this episode a 3 out of 5. Just a really average ending to an average anime series, which never really lived up to its potential. This is a series that could have been something really special and unique, and it's kind of one of those situations where I wish maybe they should have held off on like making the anime, give the author a little more time to make the manga. There needs to be like a new rule where like a manga series is running like don't even decide to start animating the series until, like, the show is, like, 75% done in manga form. Like, just because you're going to catch up way too quick, and that's going to result in really slow pacing, crappy animation, and just something that altogether is just kind of mediocre. And at the end of the day, Gangsta's not a mediocre series. It's just painfully average. And that's a real big problem, because this is a series that, like I said, I think had a lot of potential. The setting was cool, the characters were interesting, it was a nice adult series which didn't involve being in high school. It was just good stuff. I really enjoyed it, and it was a shame that I'm going to be missing this nice, mature series. On the upside, fall anime season is coming around the corner, and there are going to be a ton of new shows, so it's not like I'm going to have to worry too much. There's going to be all types of good stuff coming down the pipeline. What I will say is just an okay series, not so much of a good finale, but if there is another episode, I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the final episode of this series. That's what everybody's been saying. But until we see next week, we're just going to have to wait and see. What I will say is, I'd like to see a second season of Gangsta. There's a lot of things that need to be resolved. There's a lot of characters who never lived up to their potential and not getting to move on to their next part of the story. Just, that's all I have to say. Just an okay ending. There it is. I'm just rambling on now. But I want to hear from you guys. Before you guys leave today, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Gangsta. Would you like to see more of the Gangsta anime in the future? Do you think that Warwick is dead? Are you going to go ahead and read the manga version now? Please tell me in the comments section below. Thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure to like it, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys again for watching, and as always, stay dandy, baby.